Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Beatles Forever. Today we'll keep our adventure going with Wings, and it starts with a vacation. When Wings got canceled from Japan, one good thing that came from it was giving the band some spare time, and they decided to go to Hawaii, so that's a great place to vacation, and I'm sure. And then around this time, Paul made plans to make a new studio album, and Paul always seemed to be working on something. So in January and February, they returned to the studio and recorded the album Wings at the Speed of Sound, and each band member got to sing lead. So Denny Lane sang Paul's song, The Note You Never Wrote, and his own song, Time to Hide. Jimmy McCulloch sang his song, Wino Junko, and Joe English did Paul's song, Must Do Something About It. Paul said he wanted the group's participation, and I imagine he would like that. The Beatles were always doing their own songs and then putting in their thoughts about the songs. All of them worked together and made it perfect. So Paul wanted that in Wings, where he just wasn't the leader of the whole thing. Next, Linda sang the song Cook of the House, and Jimmy McCulloch publicly stated he was glad for Linda and that the song was a tribute to her talent of whipping up a meal in no time. So that's surprising that he was on her side at this point. So Wings at the Speed of Sound was a hit right away with the fans, but not with the critics, according to the book Band on the Run. The critics liked the fact that Paul was trying to make Wings more of a group, but they felt it wasn't as good an album as Band on the Run and Venus and Mars. And one critic stated that it was a major disappointment, a predictable drone featuring rocking chair music. So that comment had to sting and probably reminded Paul of how John used to say some of his songs sounded like granny music. But Cream magazine, too, was cruel, saying that Paul McCartney was the only substantial talent in the group and the rest of the band was third-rate. The critic felt that Denny and his vocals were lamer than Linda's, whom they felt she fit in nicely as a background singer, and the magazine critic gave them a C+. And one critic felt that Joe the drummer had a soul sound, and Paul agreed, saying he can sing well, but it's nothing to what he could do. So the first hit that single they came out with was Silly Love Songs, and this was the first single for the album, and it became a summer hit. The song went gold, and it was named the #1 single in 1976, and this song became Wings' biggest single, and it was a song that was contagious, and you couldn't help but groove to it when it was played on the radio. And also the song has a happy sound to it. It makes you want to sing and dance to it. The next song, the second single, was Let 'Em In. And it went gold too, and it raced to the top of the charts by the end of the summer. And it sounds like the album was doing better than the critics had written that they could do. So Wings at the Speed of Sound was the year's third most popular album after Peter Frampton's Frampton Comes Alive and Fleetwood Mac's album entitled Fleetwood Mac. That's not bad company to be on the top of the charts with. And I remember on the radio at that time, Peter Frampton's songs were on the radio all the time. It's it's a wonder people didn't get tired of it, but it helped him to be on top of the record charts that year. Well, sad news at this time is that Paul's dad died. Paul's father, Jim, died on March the 18th, 1976. He had been suffering from arthritis for a while, and for 8 years before his death, the attacks were crippling. He had to move into a bungalow, and Paul bought his house back from him. And he died in his home in Heswall, and his final words were, "I'll be with Mary soon." And so that's so sweet that he was looking forward to seeing the wife that he had lost so long ago. Paul's dad was 73, and John Lennon, who was living in New York, was one of the first people to hear the news, and he phoned Paul to tell him. And Paul's brother Mike wasn't surprised that Paul didn't attend the funeral. Paul was on the continent touring, and Mike said it was no coincidence that Paul was on the continent at the time. Paul would never face that sort of thing. And Paul's dad would say, "It's just the way you're made, son." Because I know Paul was very close to his father, so he probably couldn't handle being with him, seeing him that way the last time. And also, I think that the stepmother, Angela, had requested that he not attend the funeral in Liverpool because it would draw too much attention. And also, Paul felt that the band, they had made so many commitments that it would be impossible to cancel some of the tour without messing everything up. But I'm sure also that he just couldn't cope to see his father gone like that. So Paul, he wasn't close to the stepmother. She was 34, and Paul's father was 62 when they married. And he wasn't close to his stepsister either. She was 5 when his father and Angela got married. The American tour, Wings wanted to wait to tour America last because it was the biggest venue you could do outside of China and Russia. And the first place they played was Fort Worth, Texas on May 3rd. And they said it was like a military operation to make sure everything was right. There was an entourage of 33 people plus publicists. Orrin Bartlett, formerly of the FBI, was hired to scout out each concert venue because Paul, he was worried about snipers and bomb threats and all these things that could happen. The concert was a great success. The reviewers said the audience had good reason to like the concert because they performed them live with a harder edge, and it sounded better than it did on the record. And Billboard complimented the drummer Joe English for his excellent drumming, and also Linda commenting that she served a key role in Wings. Paul was liking rocking with Wings instead of recalling the past, and Paul's confidence in the group, he was gaining it. Paul had confidence in this Wings group, Linda told Melody Maker, whereas this lineup, he really knows he can get up there and sing because he knows that everybody else knows what they're doing. With this, we've listened to it and criticized it. Denny's been with us always and helped always fine in the group. Henry McCulloch didn't really fit in. And Jimmy is great, and I think he'll improve a lot. And he'll get better and better in his own style. And Joe English is a very good drummer who never really done anything big before. He's great on rhythms, and he doesn't come on like I'm a great drummer. He just gets behind it. You can't ever say that what's going to be in the future, but I'd like to see this band carry on. So a reporter asked Paul if at age 33 he was too old to rock and roll. So I can't believe this reporter asked Paul if he was too old to do rock and roll. And Paul said he didn't feel old and he wouldn't do it if he did feel like he was. And he invited the reporter to come to the show, and if he felt that way after seeing the concert, then Paul joked, it's coats off outside. But if the reporter could see him today, Paul's still rocking, so, let the man do it if he wants to. He's always going to have fans that want to see him play. So at this time, the guys in the band were getting bored. And a few times, the guys in the band would sneak into the cockpit of the plane to take turns at the controls. And once, according to the book Band on the Run, the jet went into a tailspin and it threw Paul into the aisle. It was gotten under control, thank goodness, but when Paul found out, he got on him, and rightly so. So that's nothing to joke around with. And the Wings concerts in America attracted celebrities like Cher. She went with Elton John and Jack Nicholson, Angelica Houston, Carole King, Jackie Kennedy Onassis, and Neil Sedaka. So one night, Neil Sedaka came backstage and he told Linda, "Oh, I listened so hard. I listened to every single note you sang, honey, and there's not one out of tune. You were great." And she loved that. So that would have been a compliment coming from a singer and a piano player who had been in the business since the 1950s. He knew what he was talking about. So a neat thing happened at the last U.S. concert. This concert was held at the Forum in Los Angeles on June 23rd, and Ringo Starr appeared at the last encore. The audience was hoping that they would perform the number together or say something to each other, but that didn't happen. Ringo just escorted Paul off the stage. One song together would have been fantastic. So Paul McCartney and Wings proved the critics wrong with the success of the album Wings at the Speed of Sound. Paul finally had a band that he felt knew what they were doing. And Linda also got very good at this point with her keyboard playing and her background singing. Paul was gaining more and more confidence with his success and had finally achieved his goal to be as good as the Beatles were, or even better. Wings fans loved the group and even preferred their music to that of having Beatles songs put in the show. Paul said at one point during this time, in 10 years, I'll be looking back and remembering everything about it. At the moment, I'm just zooming through it all. If I were able to back away from the tour for a while and come back to it through some sort of time machine, I'd be going, wow, this is great. I can imagine it was like being in a whirlwind without time to take things in like you should, but I know now he must look fondly back at this time of his life when he realized he could be a musician and singer just as popular as he'd always been as a Beatle. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed the video, and if you could give it a thumbs up, that would be great. Also, if you click on the notification bell, you can be informed whenever a new video is made. So I hope everybody's been having a good day, and tune in again soon for another episode of the Beatles Forever. Thank you. Bye.